Hello, boils and ghouls. Welcome to episode 146 of Dads from the Crypt. My name is Jason. Tonight, I'm joined by Mondo.
What's up, Jason?
Hey. And Jody.
Hello.
Hello. And tonight, we have a very special guest. We are joined by writer, I can't even speak tonight, editor, and disability activist, Kristen Lopez. Welcome.
Hello. Excited to be here.
Yes, excited to have you on. We've got a lot to talk to you about, especially. First of all, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about what you got going on?
Yeah, so I am, I was, put that in air quotes right now. I was an entertainment journalist for several years. I was TV editor for IndieWire. I was I was most recently the film editor over at The Wrap. I've been published most entertainment places except for Vanity Fair. One day it will happen. So, I mean, I've written about, the Olsen twins for MTV. I've written about disability in movies for, Hollywood Reporter. I am everywhere. I am like
That's
air.
awesome.
I also do a podcast called Ticklish Business talking about classic films that I've been doing forever. One day that will be financially profitable. And then I do a bunch of other things right now. I'm currently writing 2 books at the same time. Not my best planning, but that's where I'm at. One is about disability in film that Applause Books is going to put out in 2025. Tentatively called Popcorn Disability. That's what I keep calling it. And until they come up with a better title, that's what I'm sticking with.
I like that title.
And then I'm also writing a little book called Welcome Boils and Ghouls, the complete oral history of Tales from the Crypt, that's going to come out in 2026. So 2 very disparate topics that I'm just
Awesome.
spending all day with.
I can't read 2 books at the same time, so the fact you're writing 2 at the same time, I'm super impressed.
It was not planned that way. I had a great plan that was like, write the disability book, which was already started when I came up with the idea for the Tales book. And I was like, I'll start the Tales from the Crypt book in 25 and it'll be great. And I made the horrible mistake of telling my publisher, well, the 30th anniversary of the year the show ended is in 26. Well, wouldn't it be funny, like kind of like the show, if we put the book out at the time? Most people put books out when it's the anniversary of when something began. Why don't we do it on the anniversary of when something died? And they were like, great, that means you need to have it done in April of 25. So
So you have 1 year, is what you're saying?
kind of shot myself in the foot there. So, just working like a dog until, but I feel like, the Crypt Keeper would support me at this point.
I think he does.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a jovial guy. Like, he gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
He's such a fun...
Working myself to death just seems like, something he would endorse.
Now
Let's say it as a pun.
Exactly.
Right.
So many puns. I'm trying to think of many puns right now for just chapter layouts. And I realized my pun skills are terrible. So, working on that.
You've got 3 dads here, so if you need puns, I mean,
I will be hitting you all up for ideas. Trust me.
You got Al, and he's pretty good at that too.
He
so.
is.
True.
So
Yeah,
I want to take it back to the beginning for a minute. So how did you come up with the idea to do this book? What was the impetus of that?
So
And also, can you tell us about how you got into Tales from the Crypt, any favorite episodes, etc.?
Yeah, so the Tales from the Crypt book, I tell people I don't usually have great ideas. I mean, I do, but they don't usually come like fully formed. And I was talking to Alan Katz. We were having lunch, and he said, like, what's the next book after this disability book? Like, what would you want to do? And I'm like, there's only a couple of topics I feel I could really have fun with for a year of my life. One is the Olsen twins. I could write about Olsen twins movies, just their business acumen. I could live in that world for a long time. I'm like, but that seems really hard because they're really private people. And the other thing is like Tales from the Crypt. I could totally write about that. I'm like, I'd love to do an oral history, but like someone's done that, right? He's like, no. I'm like, no, somebody's done that. I can't have just conjured up this idea. I'm not the first person to ever think of anything. And he was like, no, the only book that's out is Digby Deal's book, which was written when the series was close to ending in 96. And it's more about the comics and, a little bit about the show. And I literally just saw the title just flash across my brain, conjured up a really quick little pitch for the publisher that put out my first book for TCM. And they really liked it, and I was shocked. I probably will never have an idea come that fully formed again, but it did. And I mean, as far as favorite episodes, I have so many, just because I've been watching them. Every time I do an interview, I rewatch the episode. But I always tell people my favorite episode. It's not usually one of the more beloved ones, is Forever Ambergris, because it has Roger Daltrey in it, and I love him. So it's definitely, I keep telling everybody, I'm like, if I get to even speak a word to Roger Daltrey while writing this book, just bury me afterwards, because it's just gonna be done. And Alan has great stories about Roger Daltrey, which was great. But that's one of many favorite episodes.
We all really enjoyed that one, I feel like. And the special effects in it were fantastic.
Exactly.
Like,
it's bloody as hell. It's gory. You got Buscemi for some gravitas. It's a fun one. And you can tell Gary Fleeter would go on to make Don't Say a Word, because he loves that blue color scheme, which is great.
Except there's so many damn candles. Just haphazard everywhere. Such a fire hazard. It makes me so anxious.
Yeah, and a very young Titus Welliver in there too, which is always fun to see, as like the rando army dude in the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, I completely get what you're saying though, about like now seeing Roger Daltrey in an episode and thinking, could I interview him? Could I talk? Because that's what I've done the entire time we've been doing this show. Anytime we watch an episode of something, I go, is that somebody we could actually get? Like, could we talk to them? Because if we could, I want to talk to them.
Yeah, talent acquisition has been a huge part of this. I mean, I have to thank Jason for helping me out with emails and stuff that I don't have. But it's definitely been interesting to reach out to certain... I haven't gone for A-listers yet, because, you got to build. You got to stack the deck. And, I'm working on getting smaller people, and I'm hoping by sheer numbers and maybe like a couple of key people, I'll get, no's to turn into yeses. But it's very fascinating to me, the people that out the gate have just told me no, they won't do it. One of the, and I won't give names, because I'm going to go back to this person and ask them if they'll do it. But one of the actors that older actor, not doing a whole heck of a lot right now. His rep was like, well, he's not talking about the past. Anything short of today, we're not talking about. If you want to ask him about stuff that he's doing today, you can interview him. I was like, the book isn't called What He Did Today. It's about this show. What point does he not talk about things? Like, anything that happened yesterday is officially off limits. It's been very weird to hear the people that have said no, like some of them really have to explain. And it's very funny. It's very funny and frustrating at the same time.
Yeah. As I've gone through the process, very similar. It just really depends on what they're going through at that time and kind of where they are in their career. You never know if they're, in a generous phase or they're not. I don't know if you read any of the news about Richard Dreyfuss, what happened this weekend. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I want to meet some of these people.
Yeah, and I mean that's always been my issue, as an entertainment journalist. It's just kind of the hazard of the trade. And I've been fortunate to interview people that I've been like, they're great, and then you find out that they're awful people, and you're like, damn it, they were really nice to me. Or you find people that you've heard are really difficult, and I tell people Almost Famous is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I'm like, I am Patrick Fugit. I have an honest face. I'm not intimidating. I'm like, so people tend to, talk to me about things, and then they'll get, mad when I eventually publish what they've said. But so far, it's been amazing. I've talked to, 30 different people so far for the book. And I've had, the thing that everybody tells me, actor, writer, director, they're like, I don't remember anything. It was 30 years ago. I'm like, once we start talking, you'll usually remember some stuff, which has been good. I haven't really had any interviews that have been like pulling teeth, and there's been one or two that have been like pulling teeth, but most of them have been pretty awesome. And I'm very intimidated with the as we get to bigger names like if some of these people say yes, like if Daniel Craig says yes, I will be shocked. I mean, he's making a movie right now, so I have no reason to believe he will. But fingers
The worst
crossed.
the worst they can do is say no. That's always my fault.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely it's a stress dream, for me right now because part of the pitch when you pitch an oral history is like you'll have famous people contribute to it, and it's great. So I definitely have the occasional stress dream where it's like the day I have to turn it in, and either A, it's not written, or B, it's written and I have nobody of substance, and they're like, "Where are the stars? You promised us Ewan McGregor, and we got nothing." So
Well,
still sweating.
outside of Robert Daltrey, who's your white whale? Who's your biggest get you're most
Ooh, I
excited
mean
for?
Brad Pitt. Brad
Oh, yeah.
Pitt's kind of yeah. I think
That'd be awesome.
that's he's the ultimate like just
Mhm.
I've had great story. I talked to the person who directed the episode that he did, and
Mhm.
everybody's got great Brad Pitt stories at that time. So I mean, I think that he's definitely the one where I'm just like, I have no reason to believe that he will do this,
Oh,
but
you never know.
you never know. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be optimistic. And I mean, talking to Joel Silver, just knowing the history, is definitely one where I'm like, when people ask me like, what's the one I dread the most? It's kind
Yeah.
of that one, just because
Get
I'm
it.
like, I don't know how it's gonna go, if it's gonna be positive or negative. But I'm working on a very great email that I'm hoping will dazzle him.
Yeah, that's one that I would love just to hear. Like, yeah, how would he react to all the
Right.
stuff?
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah. Well, I'll be the first one to buy the copy to read it. So
Yay! Yeah, exactly.
That sounds awesome.
You guys are all getting mentioned in the acknowledgments because again, Jason has been an invaluable resource in the podcast as well. I've had a couple of interviews that have done the podcast that have sent over. They're like, if you want to take anything from this, so if I end up quoting anything from the show, you guys will be the first to know.
yeah,
I'd
it's
appreciate
kind
it.
of a cool like whatever that thing is called with the snake eating its tail. Where like
Or the
Ouroboros.
yeah, we're like that was part of one of the things I was hoping to do with the show is to be kind of like a light oral history as much as we could as we were going through the episodes, especially when we got our Outcat segments. And I love that you're kind of now taking that and running with it. To the next
fingers crossed.
step.
I'm hoping to do everybody proud. So
Well, we're excited.
But
But tonight we are going to a totally different zone. We're going to the Twilight Zone. So for people who might not have heard the last couple episodes, we are doing Twilight Zone this month, and we're going to culminate by doing Twilight Zone the movie at the end of the month. But to prepare for that, we are watching all of the original segments that the movie is based on. So last week we did Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. So this week we're doing an episode called Kick the Can, which came out on February 9th, and I have the wrong dates. But we will correct that.
1962.
62. Thank you. For some reason it says 2012. Like that. A little bit late. But Jody, give us a plot synopsis.
All right. In this story, we meet a man named Charles Whitley. He is a retiree at the Sunnyvale Rest Home. And he starts to think that he has discovered the secret of youth. And basically, he's convinced if he acts young, he will become young. Specifically, he gets very focused on the fact that the kids are out there near the retirement home and they're playing Kick the Can. And so, which is a game that I don't really understand. I think, it's a 50s game, it's 60s game, not a 90s game. But they're out there playing Kick the Can, and he's convinced, like, if we go play this, we will become young again. His oldest friend, Ben, thinks he's going crazy, and he tries to get the superintendent to like get him under control so that he won't hurt himself because he's an old man and he keeps talking about going out and running. And so he kind of gets isolated for a while. And Charles, though, through all of it, is convinced that thinking of himself as old is what makes him old. Okay, so that night, Charles convinces several of the residents to come outside to play Kick the Can. And Ben is, he's against it the whole time. They light a firecracker, throw it out the window to distract the nurse, go out the front door and start playing. And then when Ben comes out, expecting to find everybody with the superintendent, there's a bunch of children playing the game. And he sees one of the kids and realizes that it's Charles as a young boy. But Charles no longer recognizes him, and he asks Charles to take him with him. Let me do this with you. But it's too late. And the kids run off. And I guess Ben just goes back to being old by himself. But I mean, it kind of ends with him just being, kind of sad that they're never going to find them again. There's not a big ending moment, so I didn't know quite how to finish that synopsis.
That's kind of apropos. Real quick, I looked up the rules for Kick the Can just so we can all be educated.
I literally thought I saw the Twilight Zone movie as a kid. I thought it was a game where you just found a can on the ground and just kicked it around.
Yeah, so did I.
Kids playing with trash.
But supposedly, the object of the game is to put all the players in, quote, jail, capturing them by identifying them in hiding spots. Once a player is jailed, the only way to be freed is for another player to beat the, quote, it player to the can and kick it.
So kind of capture the flaggy.
I capture the flag,
the
instead of a
base,
flag,
yeah.
you kick a can.
Okay. It's a lot more complicated than I thought.
Yeah, me too.
Kicking a can around in an alley.
All right, Kristen, you're our guest tonight. You can start us off. What did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I love Twilight Zone the movie. It's such an underrated film, and I know way too much about the legal issues that transpired from it. But Kick the Can in the film is probably the weakest segment of the movie, and this is definitely one of the weaker episodes for me. Lamont Johnson, who was the director, was kind of a Tales from the Crypt. I'm going to keep saying Tales from the Crypt. Twilight Zone regular. He did like 8 different episodes, and a lot of his episodes are predominantly simplistic, in the grand scheme of things. They don't have big twists. They're more about mortality or identity. I prefer his episode 5 Characters in Search of an Exit, which I think deals with kind of similar themes but has a better twist. This one's fine. It's fine. It's ultimately, I can see why Spielberg would have wanted to adapt it. Of course, it wasn't his first choice, but there were a multitude of reasons why he didn't adapt it. He ended up doing this one. And I think that Spielberg does better with what is presented in the episode, but this is definitely weaker stuff. I love the, theme of you're only as old as you feel. Does that manifest literally? But like Jody was saying with the synopsis, it kind of just goes nowhere and then ends. So it's hard to really put this in the pantheon of great Twilight Zone episodes.
All right, Mondo.
All right, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I thought it had a lot of great ideas under the surface, and I used to work at Apple with an 87-year-old man. And he lived by the mantra of you don't get old until you stop doing the things you love, until you just give up kind of thing. So he loved coming to Apple and talking with us young people, and he had like a pickleball team and went hiking every morning. So I love that idea behind it because I kind of feel like that as a guy who's 41 now, that I don't want to stop doing like jujitsu, which I love because I don't care if it's a young man's game. It's okay to be old and do these kind of things. So I love that idea behind it, but you're right. It just kind of fizzles out at the end. It's like this great idea with just didn't have enough substance behind it to make it a really, really great episode. But I didn't hate it by any means. I still had a good time watching the episode. Still thought it was decent. But compared to, even though I wasn't on last week's show, compared to that episode, it definitely is not up to that same standard. And do you guys think if this episode came out in 2024, would these old people like be trying to be YouTube influencers or something to stay young? Or would they be out pulling pranks on people? Like, what would they be doing?
I'm trying to think, like, what do
maybe ice bucket
kids
challenges
play nowadays? Like, what? Because, like, for me, like, I remember, we still had touch football. That was like a thing, and tag was still a thing. Yeah. Do kids play that today?
Yeah.
Definitely, tag definitely gets played. We've seen it, definitely. But a lot of kids are into Fortnite and into stuff like that, and Minecraft.
They're more indoors. Got it.
Yeah,
watching other people play games. Yes, that's what they do.
Which is okay because, like, with video games too, you can connect to a whole world of people. Like, online gaming is really big for younger people. So I got no hate.
All right, Jody.
Yeah, I'm hive minding with everybody here. It's fine. It's a fine episode. There are things about it that bother me, and I'm normally not the one to nitpick, but I'm going to because it's sometimes fun. Um, one is he keeps being convinced that if he plays this game, he can be young again, right? How many of us, though, if we're like talking about I want to be young again, are talking about being like 9 or 10? Like, no, I'm like 17. Like, or maybe even my early 20s, that would be fine. The early 20s, I at least had some freedom. 9? Like they're now a bunch of homeless children in the woods.
I think that was the issue I had when Spielberg adapted it for the movie, is that like they're like 7 and then the one kid is like 15, which makes no sense. You're like, why do people get to pick the ages that they want to go
didn't
back
get young
to?
enough.
Exactly. But at the same time, Spielberg ends the segment with a logicalness to it, spoiler alert, like the old people eventually go back to being old. They just have young hearts.
Sure.
That makes sense. But this, do they just go off into the woods and become orphans?
Just a bunch of feral children running around in the woods playing kick the can so they don't get old.
Mad Max
that sounds insane.
Exactly.
So just the whole concept of like he gets very obsessed with watching these young children play, and I just don't. I get sometimes like, I remember the innocence of youth, but I don't think that I ever am like, I wish I was like a literal kid again, like younger, sure. And again, like I said, even teenager 20s, that sounds like fun, but like the things that I enjoy doing now that are fun for me are not the things I enjoyed when I was 9 necessarily,
I think like going back to a young age, I just keep thinking in terms of like, what should I start doing earlier to make myself rich?
Right.
I'm like, so if I revert to my 10-year-old self, I need to start saving money, and as soon as I turn 18, like open up a high yield savings account.
Start buying those penny Apple stocks back then.
Right.
But my counterpoint to you, Jody, is that at 7 years old, I was living in Virginia and going fishing every day. At 17, I had terrible. My teenage years were my terrible drug addict parents. Sure. I was 20. I was working 2 jobs to try to make ends meet. So 7 sounds pretty good in that scenario to me.
And I totally get that. That makes sense to me. But I don't know that most of the time I want to go back to before I had like freedom and agency to do things I wanted. Like, that's adult stuff, man. That's a good thing about being an adult.
Because my kids are 9, they're about to be 10, and they're at that age where they can start doing some things, and they're starting to learn responsibility and what boundaries are. Like, that's a big thing right now, is teaching my daughter, especially like one about lying or, getting how to get what she wants. She's like, they're figuring out how to be functioning people in this society, because up until that age, they're like, okay, they're kids, they do whatever they want. But I think around 9, 10 is when we start integrating them in the path to being functioning responsible people. So I'm kind of like, that would be kind of a crap age to have to go back to and like go through all that all over again.
I mean, it's the only thing I can think of that is slightly. It's not the worst age. Like, I'm not 12. I'm not like going through puberty, but it's still not a great place to like get stuck and go through it again. Because these
overall,
I assume at the end of the episode, they just now go out and age naturally, or they stay young forever by playing. There are a lot of questions that this episode leaves me.
Is he going to show up at his son's house and like, hey son, take care of me now?
Yeah. You're never going to believe this, but I have the craziest story for you.
There's just it's got some ideas, but they're all pretty half-baked. And I feel like you can have the same concept, same idea of like wanting to be young again, or like you're only as young as you feel, that maybe could have been told a little bit better way. Like for me, this is very mid-tier as far as Twilight Zone goes. I love some Twilight Zone, and the best ones are miles and miles ahead of this one. This one's fine.
I think what's frustrating to me about this episode is the fact that it's written by George Clayton Johnson, who again also wrote a lot of episodes of the series, but a couple episodes before this, I think this is the 21st episode of season 3, the 16th episode of season 3, he did Nothing in the Dark, which is the one with Robert Redford. and that also deals with mortality in a way that is unique and haunting and well written. And I kind of am thinking like, George, you had like several episodes that week, huh? And you were like, well, I got to devote like X amount of time, and one of these is just not going to be as good.
Yeah, I agree that this is a very fine episode. It does something I find anthologies do sometimes, where it wants to have a clean arc, and then it kind of ends at like when the big thing happens, and then it just kind of ends. Where sometimes you want to know what's the next thing that happens. And you brought up Ewan McGregor, and that's in his Tales from the Crypt episode. Kind of ends right after the big twist happens, and like, but what happens next, or how does that happen with what we know now? Because they spend the whole episode kind of setting it up, and then boom, the reveal happens, and then you're like, no, what is the repercussions, or how do they function like that? So that kind of reminds me of that arc that sometimes we get. And I understand that they're like trying to make a bigger statement, but as an episode of TV, you also want to be a little more fulfilled by it.
Right.
Now, I worked at a nursing home for about 5 years right out of college. So being around that population and that setting, always brings me back to that a lot. And, a lot of them, a lot of people tell me, don't get old. Whatever you can do, don't get old. But they were some of the most lively, fun people I've ever been around. We always had a night once a month called Laughter is the Best Medicine, where they would just sit around and tell jokes. It was the funniest shit you ever heard. Just people telling the dirtiest stuff they could think of.
I bet they're the most vulgar jokes you've ever heard.
Yeah. So that kind of tickled that a little bit of nostalgia for me. What I found really funny, I almost like did a spit take when the superintendent talked about, well, I'm only 43. And in real life, I looked it up, he's 55. I'm like, wait, I'm 43. Is that what I look like?
It's one of those things, I was just talking to somebody about this with regarding challengers. And I was talking about how the biggest issue for me with that film was the fact that none of those characters look like they are in their early 30s. And I was like, you're supposed to believe these characters are like smoking cigarettes, being like, the life I've led, and I'm just like, Zendaya does not look 31.
Right.
I'm like, she should appreciate that, okay, for as long as she can. But I think that that's the one thing I love about some of these episodes is the fact that, age, like, that when people say, like, people looked older back in the past, I think a lot of that's true, especially in some of these shows. And, it's the one thing where the episode kind of has a good idea in the sense that, like, we still do it, we infantilize people over, 70, if you're elderly, that's usually considered like you need to be cared for, you need to be, and as somebody who writes about disability, I'm like, the disabled and the elderly, like, we're all in the same creaky boat. Nobody wants us to cross the street, nobody wants us to do any of these things. And like, I feel for that element of the episode. If anything, I wish there was a bit more. You can only do so much in the time allotted, but you only know about the one guy who's like, he wants to go live with his son, he doesn't want to live in the home, but you don't really know about anybody else's motivations to like want to give up their life. You don't know if they leaving behind family, are they unhappy in their current situation. It's really one guy for like 25 minutes convincing a bunch of other people to do this with him.
That's where I really wish they would just cut that part a little bit shorter, give us a couple more minutes after.
There's no real sense of community, and I know that Lamont Johnson episodes often were a group of people, trying to come to some sort of consensus, and this episode doesn't really do that.
Right. Yeah, I found myself sometimes in this episode sympathizing with Ben, like the other old man.
Yeah.
Not because I don't think he was a grumpy old man. Like, I don't think he was like one of those old guys who's just like angry. I think he was just like, I'm fine being an old guy. Like, I don't want to do this thing. Like, I'm fine with this. This is okay for me. And that is one thing that, Ben is kind of the only one who accepts like it's okay to be old. I I'm not trying to be 20 because when someone in their 40s does that, it's very sad.
Sure,
Like,
Jody, you break out your cool glasses, trying to
I
look
got my cool
all
glasses. That's true. That's true. But like I don't want to be another age. Like there are things I don't like about being 43. There are things like when I, go to the doctor and stuff that I don't like. But like there are other things like my 40s are better than my 20s in some ways. Like I don't necessarily want to change my age. And so like I think Ben is presented as being like this old stick in the mud, but I'm kind of with him, man. Like kind of on Ben's side.
I
I
think
mean, especially the dude got kind of aggravating after a while. He's like, "Kick the can, Ben. We have to go play kick the can." After a while, I'd be like, "Dude, just go play kick the can. Leave me alone."
the episode doesn't really have any sense of stakes,
Yeah.
like what happens if they don't kick the can? There's no ticking clock, it's
They
like
continue to live as old
exactly,
people.
yeah. There's no real sense of urgency to this, and I would have
Yeah.
loved more of the two of them maybe just debating this element like
Mhm.
more, as opposed to like the fact that playing the game is nothing more than just a metaphor for something as opposed to a literal game. That I think would have
So
sustained
yeah.
more.
So Charlie says, "Okay, I got a can here and a bucket here. You got to kick one or the other."
But dumb tip.
Or even having something
Busy
like where it's
living.
they're like, if we don't play this game, something will happen,
Right.
like somebody will die, or I don't know. I just need some sort of like urgency other than one guy wants to be young, and I'm just like, dude, I get it, you're having an identity crisis, but I feel like you're really like going away. You're going
But
away with this whole thing that
well,
I'm not into.
I think you're right though. That would have like we're dealing with older folks. Maybe one of them has some kind of ailment related to their age, and like
Yeah.
they're severely having difficulty, or they're dying, or something like that. That adds some stakes to it. Like there's a reason other than just kind of like we're bored. Because I mean, that's kind of how it comes across. Is like I'm bored and I feel lonely here at this house, which makes perfect sense. I understand it is boring and lonely there at times. I'm sure.
Jody, I
But
like your take though. I like your take about the one guy who's kind of the curmudgeon, like not a curmudgeon. He's not a curmudgeon. I like your take on that. He's the one
fine
guy that's
where he
okay
is.
with aging. He's okay
Yeah.
with his age. He's like, I like my
Content.
life. I'm okay with this, and I don't want to be young again. And maybe that's maybe that's kind of the twist at the end when they're all playing kick the can. Maybe like they have to do that for the rest of their existence. That's like purgatory almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a darker episode of Twilight Zone than it seems.
Yeah, I'm curious what they could have
We're
gone
actually in hell the whole time.
away. Right. I'm wondering with a lot of these what they could and could not get away with.
Sure.
Like I don't know if giving them one of them, a fatal disease, terminal disease condition or something like that would have been like too much for the censors at that time. Who knows?
I don't know. Twilight Zone could push it a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
Rod Serling could get away with a lot.
They killed off somebody's granddad in one
Okay.
of these episodes, so I think they could. And I mean, again, the Spielberg version of it goes about it a completely different way and actually adds in a racial component that has not aged well. So I don't think there's ever really been a successful way to look at this episode, and it just makes me wonder if maybe like it's just not an episode that really has a lot going for it.
Yeah. Like I said, it just kind of feels a little half-baked. Like it's an idea that never got fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
But it did get made.
Again,
Twice.
Yeah. So just going back to, again, my favorite character, the superintendent. Do anyone else clock where else he's been in?
No.
I see on the sheet, but I didn't recognize him at the time.
As soon as I heard his voice, I recognized him as the movie studio head from The Godfather, who has the horse's head in the bed.
Yep.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that at all.
I was like, I know that voice, and I thought about it. I'm like, damn, horse's head. Not many people make me think that. All right, well, let's move on to our episode rating. We do 0 to 5, 5 being the best, 0 being the worst. You can do half points. Kristen, what do you give this episode?
Oh, this gets a 2. It's a good, like, just basic Twilight Zone episode. If it's on, you can put it in the background and just, be like, was a nice 25 minutes, you know. But there's a reason I don't really think it has the cultural cachet of, you know, your Eye of the Beholders, or even something like Nothing in the Dark, which was written by the same person. You know, it's got a good message, but it's pretty basic. There's not enough weight to it. I think I might actually be giving Spielberg credit for making it slightly better in the movie, which is weird because I usually grouse about it. But yeah,
you wrote a whole book about that, didn't you?
I would love to write a book about Twilight Zone the movie, but I'm sure at least one person will never talk about that ever.
Yeah.
And you know, honestly, I don't know if I want to talk to that person either. So yeah, but no, it gets a 2 from me.
Well, isn't one of your books about you? You should read the book.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I did do a book about adaptations, but they're literary adaptations. So unfortunately, I mean, give it time though. I've been trying to think of other ways to monetize but have you seen other things? And TV adaptations might be a thing. If it gives me an opportunity to talk about Twilight Zone the movie, I'm in.
There you go. All right, Jody, what's your rating?
Yeah, so this is just middle of the road. I mean, the main thing I enjoyed about this episode is just how nice black and white photography looks in HD.
Yeah.
Like, it's really pretty. Like,
yes.
I love the HD upgrades for all these old black and white movies.
Yeah, well, especially with older people with all the line, the lines on the faces and everything. It looked really cool. I love that.
Yeah. No, one of my favorite, like a big, nice 4K movie from 2020 is great, but even better looking is a nice 4K movie from like 1945. They're gorgeous. And so I enjoyed watching it in that respect. But as far as the story, it's a 2.5 for me. Like, it's fine. Again, I don't hate it. I'll watch it, but I'm not going to seek it out.
Yeah. Mondo.
I'm sure Jody was going to be like, I hated it. It's a 3. But I'm with Jody on this. I'm at 2.5 on it. I liked it a little bit more than Kristen did, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's like right middle of the road. Like, I was went smack dab in the middle at 2.5.
Yeah, I'm going a 3, mostly just for not as much of the episode, but just for me, all the reminiscing it gave me of
Sure,
my work with elderly population, and also making me think of The Godfather. It gets points for that, just unintentionally.
I was just gonna say the whole rating's based on the fact of the superintendent character. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe I should take a point off because it made me think that's what 43-year-olds should look like.
I mean, Jason, you're pretty close. Like, I looked at that guy. I'm like, that guy looks just like Jason.
If this wasn't YouTube, I would be flipping Mondo off right now, but I don't want to get in trouble.
Would that get us in trouble? I don't know.
I don't know if you can flip someone off on YouTube.
Hey,
but...
Get serious of the shit we said.
You know, we're not going to lose any sponsors.
All right. So Mondo, again, you weren't here last week, so I had to do Song of the Day.
Oh, I heard what you picked. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but I was checking out the episode.
It was a William Shatner episode in a rocket shaped. I couldn't resist. And
I was down, man. I thought that was a good pick.
Our Spotify algorithm is so fucked.
Dude, it's fun, man. It's fun. I'm not gonna lie, it makes me smile if I actually listen to our playlist and like Morrissey comes on. So I'm like, it reminds me of Jason. Like, it's cool.
Hey, I will stand up for so William Shatner did an album with Ben Folds a few years ago, where Ben Folds did all the music and arranging and everything, and they did a version of Common People, which I think is by The Strokes. Anyway, it's really cool. Like, it's actually an enjoyable William Shatner song. So Rocket Man may not be, Shatner at his actual coolness, but he can do some stuff.
I like it.
All right, but Mondo, give us this week's Song of the Day.
Alrighty. So, speaking of being old, I just got home from a 5-day metal festival in Maryland called Maryland Death Fest, and holy shit!
How old do you feel now?
Dude, oh man, it was rough. It was rough. I mean, the best way possible. But there's a part where the singer goes, "How's everybody feeling tonight?" I looked at my buddy. I said, "Pretty rough, actually." And I made the old people around us laugh too with that one, so I was pretty proud of that one. But but I will say though, like one of the great parts of that is still being my age, but still doing the things I love that aren't technically like an old man's game or something like that. And shout out to one of our listeners, one of our biggest fans, Matthew, who I got to meet up with at the fest and have a drink with and enjoy the last band Bloodbath with. So I got to pick a band that I saw because they're a bucket list band that I probably thought I would never see. They're from Ireland. They're called Primordial. And I've actually used them before, so I'm double dipping here. But the song that I had in my brain right when I thought of this actually really, really, really works because they do all kinds of stuff when it comes to like that. They're really big on that Irish folklore and stuff like that. So the song I picked is off The Gathering Wilderness from 2005. So we're going back 19 years, which doesn't seem like 2005 should not be 19 years ago. That's some bullshit that we have to deal with nowadays as old people. But it's called The Coffin Ships. And it's kind of about the fragility of life and death and how death kind of creeps up on us. So it's one of my like one of the lines in the song that I love. It goes like, "Oh God, that friend should be so dear and human flesh so cheap." Talking about how like the friendships we kind of make and the connections we have on this earth are more important than our cheap flesh, which is easily broken and destroyed. So again, great 5-day festival. Again, great meeting one of our fans. It was really cool hanging out with a fan of ours, and very flattering, like by the way he talked about our podcast, because we do this every week, and I know Jason probably hears some feedback and he probably reads reviews. I don't, because I'm sensitive. But, hey man, like I wear it on my shoulder, dude. Like I know if I read reviews, it's gonna give anxiety and piss me off.
Don't feel bad because I do it all the time for my podcast, and I've slowly had to because I self edit, and I've had to give my co-host editing duties because I have to write these books, and I can't go back and like tweak it in the way that I like, and I'm like one of the reviews, I know somebody's gonna say we say like too much, there's gonna be too many so yeah, no, I know all about review sensitivity.
Pretty much
I used to go through and try to get rid of all the all the likes, but I'm like, well, whatever. It just sounds more like a conversation when that stuff is left in. So I promise you, it never bugs me, at least.
I mean, it's part of what we do here. It's a very casual kind of podcast too. Like there are different kinds.
The irony is, as far as reviews, it's pretty much only people we know leaving us good reviews. The only one negative review we've ever really gotten was saying that we're too woke. I'm like, okay, I'll take that.
Too woke.
That's a complaint I'll take every single day.
Like, thank you. But the whole what you said earlier about this shouldn't be as long ago as it was. So this week is the 30th anniversary of my bar mitzvah.
Oh wow!
And so I'm feeling really old on that front. And on top of that, we're planning my kids' bar and bat mitzvah, which is in 3 years. So my wife's like, "Do we have anything on July 10th, 2027?" I'm like, so it's time is weird, man. Time is weird.
Yeah. But to get back to just to kind of go back to it a little bit, though, it is flattering to meet a big fan of our podcast in person, because I can't handle compliments. I'm terrible at handling compliments. And just hearing like how much has impacted like his enjoyment or whatever he does, and it was really flattering. So I just really do. I just want to say I really do.
Oh yeah, and he always likes her stuff. Well, he's like, I'm only people that actually likes her stuff on Facebook. So thank you, Matthew, for all the support.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. It's good hanging out with you, my friend.
Yeah. All right, Jody, give us some horror news.
All right. So between technical problems and weather, I haven't been here for a little bit. And so I've got a little bit of catching up to do on the horror news. Let's start with releases. All right. First off, you can now watch The First Omen at home, which I'm actually really excited about, because at the time you had Immaculate and The First Omen both coming out, and I don't think I wanted two Nun movies like back to back. So I've seen Immaculate. Now I can go back and check out The First Omen. I've heard it's pretty good.
I've not heard anyone say anything bad. Kristen, you're shaking your head. Okay, you're the first one.
I hated it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, that could be because I love Immaculate. So
I loved Immaculate too.
Really,
So
I
maybe
love
yeah,
Immaculate though.
yeah,
As of right now,
it's a lot.
Immaculate right now is my number 2 of the year so far.
it's up.
And
It's up
and
there for me.
only because I am in love with Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
I have to see that one. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, go see that. I
It
think you'd
definitely
like
got
it.
some mixed reviews, but I thought that movie was just unlike anything I've ever seen and hit every mark that I wanted it to hit.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
All right, another one coming out, which I'm sure will be on everyone's top 10 list, is Tarot is already available for home viewing. I think it was in the theater for like a week, and then a week later it came on video. It was even
5
faster than
business days, I think.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned that a lot of studios, if it doesn't make X amount opening weekend,
Yeah,
they're
it's
just
all
going to
about
pull it
opening
and put it on
weekend.
streaming.
Yeah. But I have heard some people say that Tarot actually falls into the too bad or so bad it's good category. So I don't know.
Fun, yeah. On the
I
right
might
side.
watch it sometime on a Friday night,
Did you guys ever watch the what is it, Fantasy Island, the horror movie?
No,
No.
I remember
Okay,
that.
that falls in that same category, Joe. You like take an edible and watch that, and you're just gonna laugh. It's a
That's a good
terrible
kind of
fucking movie, but it gets to a point of absurdity where you're just giggling.
All right. Other things coming out on video or on home video is Boy Kills World. That's the Bill Skarsgård can't talk but murders everybody, and Bob from Bob's Burgers narrates the whole thing. I don't know if it's good or not.
Hold on a second. He has a name. It's H. John Benjamin.
I know it's H. John Benjamin.
And he also plays a pigeon in the new Geico commercials, and he's great.
Yeah.
He's somehow amazing.
And one that I'm really excited to see. So there is a indie artsy kind of movie coming to theaters on May 31st called what's it called? In a
Violent nature.
In a Violent Nature.
That looks
It's supposed to be like Friday the 13th, but in an indie artsy way. And so I'm intrigued because I'm a slasher guy. I love slashers, and there's not enough new ones. I'm intrigued to see how you make an indie artsy slasher.
Allegedly, the stories I've heard is that people were puking in the theater. I don't know if that's true or not. But anytime I'm hearing that there's vomit being dispensed in a movie theater, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Well, 3 people got food poisoning at the snack bar, and then
Exactly.
Well, speaking of vomiting in a movie theater, the movie that was the first one to ever have the legend of people vomiting in the theater because of how horrifying it was. We have news about the new Exorcist. Officially, Mike Flanagan is going to write and direct the next Exorcist movie.
Now that's a 180.
If anyone can pull off an Exorcist movie that I actually want to see, it's Mike Flanagan.
Quick shout out to our friend Allison at the Who's There podcast, who has a really awesome interview with Mike Flanagan on her podcast channel. Please check it out.
Mike Flanagan has made the most Catholic horror that's ever existed with Midnight Mass. And so for him to take on the most Catholic movie franchise in horror, I feel like he's the right fit for this. He literally the only guy who can make me excited about an Exorcist movie right now. So one thing I didn't get to mention, because like I said, I haven't been around the last couple of weeks, is that we have got the announcement of the Jason universe, which nobody knows what that is. It's a Friday the 13th thing of some sort.
It's the most non-announcement I've ever heard.
I'll bet you money that he ends up as a character in like fucking Fortnite or some shit like that.
Well, no,
he's already in the game Multiverses. That's one of the things I was going to say. Multiverses is a game where all the WB characters can fight like Smash Brothers. And so you can have Jason Voorhees fight with Finn from Adventure Time and Velma coming in for like backup.
I'm sorry. That sounds like the best
game.
Yeah,
that exists.
Yeah.
How does that work though with the rights being what they are?
Warner Brothers. I don't the Jason Universe thing. I have no idea.
Well,
I think they're kind of getting along a little bit.
I think what the issue is that there's the character Jason and there's the Friday the 13th movie. So you can use the character Jason in a property, but you can't have it be a Friday the 13th thing.
And it can't be a movie. Like something with this new thing is there's no movies, but they can make a TV show, which they're still planning on doing, even though Brian Fuller's no longer there.
And not call it Friday the 13th. Yeah, there's a whole...
Can't call it Friday the 13th. and Jason just popped up in this multiverses game. So I honestly have no idea what this means. They claim it's going to get us more Friday the 13th content, which I want more. Whatever it is, I'll take it. I really want a movie, but I guess I'll take a NECA figure. Like if you'll make a new figure for me to put up in my office, because I still need Jason Goes to Manhattan, and I need a Jason X figure. Those haven't been released yet, except for like the old Movie Maniac.
Movie Maniacs did Jason 10, and if you see that figure from someone who knows what they have, it's like $300.
Yeah, no, I want NECA to make a new one that costs $35. That's part of what I want here.
NECA just released though; they're doing the Camp Crystal Lake set again.
Yes,
where you can buy the accessory separate for $35, and the Nightmare on Elm Street one too.
I was gonna say I've got all kinds of NECA news coming up.
Well, real fast, if you're jonesing for a Friday the 13th movie, the Never Hike Alone fan films are fun as hell. And have you seen Friday the 13th Vengeance?
I have.
Vengeance 2. Jody, you can watch them because you know me. You can watch them.
Yeah.
You should check them out. I think you'd really enjoy them.
Okay. Yeah. I think they're also on YouTube. Is one of those the one that Darcy is in? She's in the second one, which was the first one I watched, which is like one of them, like the main character, like everyone in there is a Friday the 13th character. Like they have a lot of old actors. I forgot the guy's name, CJ something, that played Jason in a couple movies. Yeah, Graham. Yeah. He's in there.
Is that the one at the hospital?
No hospital that I remember. Maybe.
Hey, I'm glad we have these fan films because it's been 15 years since we've gotten anything real. So at least they're keeping it going.
Have you gone back and watched a remake?
I haven't. I
watched it for like a year or so ago. Oh, it's not bad. I kind of liked it.
I haven't. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I watched it in the theater and I hadn't seen it since. And then I watched it like a year ago. I was like, that's not bad.
See, when I saw it midnight at the theater, just have a bad taste in my mouth because
Speaking of movies that had remakes about 15 years ago but haven't heard anything from since, Blumhouse is making a new My Bloody Valentine movie, which is very exciting to me because I love the original. It's one of my favorites. The remake is one of the better remakes from that era.
Yeah, I remember seeing that like again on a Friday night, full theater. Everyone had the three glasses on. They had a good time with it.
Yeah, it's got everything you would want one of those remakes to have. It's gory. There is a extremely long nude scene in the middle of it. Like
it's like a 3D nude scene.
I know it's made for an audience of horny teenagers. Like, and you know what? I still like movies like that. So
I wish Patrick Lussier and Todd Farmer would reteam and make another movie, because between that and Drive Angry, I mean, the world just wasn't ready for their brand of insanity, and exactly. I miss them. So yeah,
man, I like My Bloody Valentine, but Drive Angry is like I love that movie so much. It's so ridiculous and it's so good.
Did they do Crank too as well? I mean, did that someone else?
I don't think so.
All right. I have more news in quality filmmaking. The latest public domain horror movie is Piglet. Piglet the movie. I guess it's not related to the other ones. I don't know, man.
Poor Piglet.
For a while, this was really fun. I'm getting really bored with it. Like, dude, another public domain. Yeah, so
what are they gonna do with the Eeyore one? Like, have him like fucking hang himself at the end? Like, come on, please.
Stop it. It's like him and Marvin the Android just sit in the room and trying to see who kills themselves first.
I mean, my wife and I were watching the Robin Hood Disney movie last night because I can't get the fucking song out of my head. The Little John and Robin Hood are walking through the forest. That song.
Yeah,
laughing back and forth about which other. Yeah, that one. And we're talking about how all, like, when we were kids, they made us watch Old Yeller in like fucking kindergarten. A bunch of 5-year-olds get to watch a movie about a kid killing his fucking dog.
Or Bambi, yeah.
And I was like, what's going to happen at the end of this? The Sheriff of Nottingham's going to hang himself because he couldn't stop Robin Hood? Like, that'd be the perfect ending to a kid's movie because Walt Disney is a fucking sociopath.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, though, if the Eeyore public domain movie is just like 90 minutes of him talking to the camera playing Russian roulette or something like that. That might be too artistic, though, I think, for these movies.
Him and Christopher Walken in that room from Deer Hunter just playing Russian roulette.
Well, wasn't there a movie, I think it's like 13 or something, where people are like playing Russian roulette in the group? That's like the whole movie.
What?
I don't know
There's
that
some
one.
movie is like early 2000s. I'll have to look it up.
I think you
it's-
made that up,
the movie
Jason.
was
It's fine.
7.
All right, my final bit of news is all NECA news because I collect action figures and I have them all over my office.
Me too.
And NECA has been killing it this last month or so. They've been doing regular releases. I think they're calling it Monster Mayhem or something along those lines. Anyway, here's some of the stuff they've released that is in my pre-order box right now. Vincent Price action figure with 3 different heads of different eras of Vincent Price. So you like old Vincent Price, like Edward Scissorhands era? Go with that. You can put that head on. You want 1960s Roger Corman Vincent Price? Put that head. And he comes with his cookbook. He comes with a skull. Come on, this is awesome. Other things, though. We also got, I need to remember what their names are. David and, what's the other guy from American Werewolf?
David Naughton and...
David and Jack are the 2 characters. So David and Jack, you can buy the 2-pack with both of them in it, but it's not only them like as humans before they got attacked. You can change out the heads so you get the werewolf half head, like with glowy eyes. You can change out the entire upper body of the one who gets killed, so it's like his rotted zombie version. Also a pre-order that I pre-ordered instantly.
Man, Jody, $70 for that one. I mean, you went all in, brother.
I know, man, but I also have the $100 Krampus figure in my pre-orders too.
I do have that one in my pile of loot as well. Yeah. Thank you, Big Bad Toy Store.
But we also have a Christopher Lee Dracula, the horror Dracula figure that looks so friggin' amazing. There's so much good NECA stuff.
For the record, Christopher Lee is better than the other guy whose name I'm a little bit buzzed. The other guy's name, the original Dracula.
Yeah.
Oh, Bela Lugosi?
Yes, Lugosi. I was thinking Blank is Dead because it's a Baja song. I couldn't remember the name.
So yeah, I have the Krampus, the American Werewolf, and the Vincent Price figures all in my pre-orders. They have Ultimate Chucky that is from the TV series, like the Christmas Chucky with a Santa Claus hat and a sweater and a chainsaw. And if you've seen the end of season 2, you know what that chainsaw's for. So yeah, lots of good stuff.
Yeah,
it's a great time. I say this all the time. It is a great time to be a horror fan.
I've been. I told myself I wouldn't buy any of those anything new because it's Monsterpalooza, the big annual horror convention in Southern California this weekend. So I told myself I had to start saving. So I'm watching all these great releases. Like they'll all come around, they'll be used or on eBay or whatever. But
right now when you pre-order it on Big Bad Toy Store, they don't charge you till it ships, and so this is just pretend money right now.
I don't want to know this.
I'll have to deal with it when it ships in a few months.
Oh God!
This is why our generation is not financially responsible. Like when I die, I'm not gonna have any life insurance, but you can sell my record collection and my fucking NECA figures.
I'm gonna have so much good money from all these open box figures I have around my office.
Oh, I love it.
All right, thank you, Jody. All right, so our last 2 segments, I'm gonna kind of push in together a little bit. I asked our Patreons what games they played as a child, and then I thought we could talk about what we did as a child and what kind of and I have a whole thing about this, about how we kind of things we do to reconnect with our inner child in that way. But so just to go to our Patreons first, our friend Andy said that we played Simon, Guess Who, Mousetrap, Battleship, Clue, and he said I also played something called Squatter, which was the Australian version of Monopoly.
You know what, though? It sounds somehow more wholesome than Monopoly. What the goal is. The goal is
the American version is you become a big businessman and get all the money. But in the Australian version, you just get on a piece of property and won't leave, no matter what.
Yeah, but you know what, though? That's just people trying to live their lives. Or our version was like, how do we put all of our friends in the poorhouse while dominating the financial sector? Like,
yeah. All right. Our friend Tommy said Risk is probably the board game we played the most. I remember we first got it as a gift when I was in second grade and played it all the time. Memorable video games were Indiana Jones Last Crusade on PC, Earthbound on SNES, WCW versus NWO, World Tour on N64.
Damn.
Yeah, that's a good ones. Whitney said board games, Othello, which I'm not familiar with.
Othello.
It's
you basically have a white and black token, and where you move, you take other people's tokens.
Okay.
I don't know that game, but I've
seen
Google
it. But Parcheesi and Sorry on the PC, mostly educational games. My favorite was Pepper's Adventures in Time by Sierra. So it's interesting that pretty much everyone said either a board game or a video game, but no one mentioned like playing football, playing tag, all those things.
That's because you're a jock, Jason.
Yeah, I'm a total jock.
Jason's favorite record is Jock Jams too. Just threw it.
There we go.
Yeah, I remember, at the playground playing like touch football and stuff like that, but it was really a peer pressure thing. I am not an athletic boy. I never was. And so it's just, that's what everybody else was doing. So there was nothing else to do if I didn't do that.
I was never athletic. I was just tall. So they just assumed I could throw basketballs.
As a wheelchair user and a child, I was considered a liability. So I usually just had to I read a lot. But I did get in the occasional like tag game. I dreamed of playing dodgeball, but again, the concept of flying rubber balls, girl in a wheelchair, the teachers just saw the lawsuit a mile away. So didn't get to play that. Although I do have a memory, it's a weird childhood memory of like my teacher telling us we were going to play this weird game that was like based on a British thing where it was like running from one end to the field of the other, and then you like push people down or try to lift them in the air. I don't know. It seemed very dubious, but I distinctly remember them being like, you can play this game. And I was like, why am I being lifted in the air? I don't know. Again, that could have all been BS to just like include me. But if anybody remembers a weird children's game that they play in Britain that involves pushing people down and or lifting them in the air, let me know, because I would love to know if that was made up.
Is that like Red Rover or King of the Hill?
Yeah, it was kind of like a Red Rover thing. Yeah, I think that might have been it, but they kept saying it was British.
Red Rover was a dangerous game. Yeah. I remember if you hit somebody who had a good strong grip, like you would like completely flip over their arms. I remember trying to break through and just like turning a complete flip and landing on my back.
That's the kind of game I was good at because I'm a big guy. I was a big kid. One of my favorite things we used to do, and I don't know how this is physical ed, but they ever do the parachute thing.
Everyone, yes, of course.
Yeah, I'm like, what does this have to do with physical education? You do this huge parachute, you go get your shoe and run back. But it was fun.
Yeah.
So I grew up in rural Virginia, and we played lawn darts.
I had those.
Okay, but we upped the ante. How we would do it is we'd play in teams, and one person would have to have a hula hoop, and you'd have to wait for the lawn dart to come out, and the goal was to get it through the hula hoop.
That's awesome.
The other thing we would do
for our younger listeners who don't know, lawn darts got banned because they were literally a big heavy dart, like a few pounds, with a spike on the end of them, and you threw them up in the air and they went down nose first and hit a target on the ground. But sometimes they would hit a child in the head and like impale them.
It's basically a javelin.
Yeah, like the darts that you throw at the wall, but heavy going towards your head using gravity.
The other thing we did is we'd also climb trees, and the goal was to see who wouldn't fall. Basically, what it is when someone's climbing the tree, you shake it, and then see if you can knock them out of the tree before they got too high. So you get the highest. So a friend of mine was pretty high up on the tree, and we're shaking, and he fell, and he hit like 4 branches on the way down, and one went into his side and impaled him. So we pulled the branch out because we figured we didn't want to get in trouble. We're like 6 years old or 7 years old. So, and then we go, because again we live in a small community. So we go. We're having dinner at his house. and we're still having dinner, and he has a white T-shirt on, and as we're having dinner, blood just starts
Oh.
pooling onto his white T-shirt. We got in a lot of trouble. Let's put it that
Oh,
way.
Yeah.
He's trying to keep a straight face, talking to his mom as blood is just pooling in his T-shirt and just seeping through it. It was pretty awesome. So yeah, we were dumbasses when we were kids, and I don't know how I survived that time period.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to when I was in middle school and we did PE, but the teacher did not care. Like our PE class was, we would all line up. He would check to make sure that we had dressed in our gym clothes, and then he would go sit down and drink coffee and read his newspaper while we played dodgeball with no adult supervision with a bunch of like 13, 14-year-olds. It was the most violent, insane version of dodgeball that you can do. And I remember like people were getting like knocked down to the ground by the force of the dodgeball. People were getting hurt on a daily basis. And the coach just continued to sit there and drink his coffee and read his newspaper. So, yeah.
Quick shout out though to Tommy talking about Earthbound, one of my favorite games of all time.
Oh yeah,
and there is a really cool documentary that just came out called Earthbound USA about like the Earthbound community, and people getting just super stoked to play the game and how Nintendo put a kibosh on and all that. So
yeah, if we're gonna start talking about Nintendo and Super Nintendo era RPGs, I can go on. This podcast is going to be about 6 hours long, but I just say Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy, Zelda, all those things.
I'm with
you. Yeah. Well, I want to pivot the conversation to our dad advice about, getting in touch with your inner child in a way. I recently got a Steam Deck like 6 months ago, and I figured out how to do all the emulators on it. And it's literally like a portal back to different points in my life with each different system. And it's funny because my wife was saying like it's so funny that you bought this big expensive system, this fancy thing, and you're playing games 20, 30 years old. But after watching this episode, I'm like, no, it's almost like a portal, like reconnecting me to where I was when I was playing this game. I remember playing NBA Street while I was in college, or playing Mario Kart 64 in middle school and high school, or playing Sega games from elementary school. So it's like, I don't know, it puts me in an interesting mind place. It's kind of like, it's almost hypnotizing in a way, a little bit, to remember like what I was doing, like where I was when I played most of these games. What couch was I sitting on? Was I sitting on the floor? Was I in my dorm room? And it's an interesting way to kind of reconnect a little bit and kind of think about different phases of my life, and again, connecting with your inner child a little bit. Does anyone else do anything like that?
On Steam Deck, I just perfected Stardew Valley. That's right. I'm one of 0.5% players that have done this because I'm a psychopath. But I would say for me, it's jiu-jitsu, because I train with a lot of younger people, and it's one of those activities I think kind of keeps me young, because I'm doing something that 41-year-old people kind of, I would say shouldn't do, but a lot of them don't do. And having that time to get in the mats and perform martial art and be kind of, it's violent in a controlled way to where it's playful. And I think that's one thing as we get older we lose out on, as we lose the ability, we kind of lose that sometimes, is our time to play and have that kind of interaction with people. So I would say that's what I still do to keep it. And going to 5-day fucking metal fest with a bunch of young people. So there's a lot of old people there though, and I say old people like my age and older, so that was kind of
cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the places where I find those moments are just hanging out with my kids and doing stuff with them, like doing things they pick and letting them decide what we do sometimes. And sometimes you end up doing stuff that maybe you haven't done in a while. Doing things with them. Sometimes sometimes I have to be the dad and be an adult, but sometimes you just get to play, and that's fun. Jason, you were talking about emulators. I do want to mention that if you have an iPhone, they just recently allowed an emulator on iOS for the first time called Delta, and it's free. So if you want to play some video games on your phone, you can do it. It's got touch controls, or if you have like a Xbox controller or whatever, you can connect to it. So it's pretty cool getting to revisit those old things. I've also been trying lately to just kind of reconnect with some of the stuff I used to love. Like one of my things as a kid that I was known for was drawing all the time. I did lots of art and not like, little kid pictures. Like I was pretty good. Like I did some good drawings. I was good at it. But I just stopped somewhere along the way. And so I've been trying to get back into that because those things that I used to love that maybe I got too busy for, or I got convinced I wasn't good enough at it over time because, as a kid, you think you're good at everything. And then as you get older, you start thinking you're bad at everything. Remembering what it's like to be like, yeah, actually, I have some talent here. That is something I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And getting back into that again.
Kristen?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely, I tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't really know if I act my age just in general. So I'm still like, I watch a lot of, movies from my childhood. And,
Mhm.
I still will watch a Rugrats marathon like it is nobody's business.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I'm going to Disneyland tomorrow, and I spend a lot of time there, and I think a lot of that is just, as again, growing up as a disabled child, where so often, was being told what you can't do. It's nice to, when I do kind of indulge my inner child, it's on my terms. It's the things that I'm like, okay, well, it's this really weird, like, liminal threshold between, the adult and being, a child, where I'm like, okay, I get to do this because I want to, so it's an interesting thing. But yeah, going to Disneyland, like,
Nice.
just getting to see some poor sap in a Mickey Mouse costume who's probably sweating in 80-degree heat, brings in out the inner, 10-year-old in me.
That's cool.
Yeah, I went to Disney World for the first time as a 30-year-old, and I brought my kids with me because, obviously I did. Because of course I did. But there's a picture of me, like, where there's a parade happening, and I'm just, like, beside the parade. I've got my hands in the air, and I'm like, that is me at my purest in that moment right there. Something about Disney World.
Oh, it's magic. It really is.
It
People
really
give
is.
Disney adults guff, for existing, and I'm like, Disney adults, like, we just want a couple hours to, like, not think about bills or the
Yeah,
state of the climate
100%.
or,
Yeah.
something like fascism. We don't want to have to deal with it. We listen, I know I'm indulging in capitalism, but, like, at least it's giving me, something to be happy about.
Just give
I
me
mean,
a
we're
day
stuck in
off
the
from-
system. Might as well have some enjoyment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I just remembered is in August, I'm taking my son to summer camp for a week.
Oh,
So
nice.
I'm going to be, it's an all abilities camp. So I'm going to be his caretaker for a whole week. So I'm like, I need to start getting into shape if I'm going to be outdoors and like walking and being active for that long after my, sedentary adult life.
You'll have to fill me in because as a child who was not allowed to go to summer camp and my parents did not know that there were like disability, like, I don't want to say disability camps because that sounds weird.
Yeah. It's
But like my
all
parents didn't know about this. But yeah, so I've always, it's why I love movies about summer camp, because they've nostalgized and presented an ideal that I'm sure is not true at all.
Mhm.
But I'm gonna buy it.
Sleepaway Camp is 100% true.
I could exactly, or the weird camp that they send the kids to in The Parent Trap. I mean,
Yeah.
either one, equal possibility.
I hadn't thought about that when you're talking about the things that connect to your inner child. Like, I didn't go to camp much. Like, I went to camp in 4th grade and left after one night because I didn't like being away from home. Like, I was totally homesick. But I love summer camp movies. Like, those, some of my favorite movies are summer camp movies for some reason. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'm chasing that, chasing the summer camp experience I never had.
All right. Well, hopefully all of our listeners can spend some time and connect with your inner child. All right. Well, that wraps up another episode. Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people follow you?
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. You can find me on all social media. I'm at Kristen Lopez 88. I have an official website, which is KristenKLopez.com. I do a podcast called Ticklish Business, which you can find on all podcast platforms. I'm a struggling writer now that is writing 2 books, but also needs to feed myself. So if you would like to help out, I do a Substack, which is at kristenlopez.substack.com. And as Jason rightly reminded me, I already have a book out. I completely forgot that was a thing. It's called But Have You Read the Book? 52 Literary Gems That Inspired Our Favorite Movies. It's all about film adaptations, and you can buy that wherever you buy books. I don't care, indie bookstore, Barnes and Noble. As long as the book is bought, I'm not going to judge where you bought it.
Nice. All right. Well, next week we'll be continuing our Twilight Zone reviews with the episode "It Is a Good Life." We appreciate everyone for listening. We'd really appreciate if you give us a rating review on iTunes, a rating on Spotify, like and subscribe on YouTube, and follow us at Dads from the Crypt Talk on TikTok. And with that, we thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypt.
Adios.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.